Yeah, so one last question. You're good for your 30 to 40 minutes presentation, right? Time works.
Yeah, might be a little briefer than that. That's
Okay, so
depending
how
on like
many?
the. Is that me? Did I break? Hello?
Yes, I can hear
Yeah.
you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I'm saying how many minutes do you need?
It really depends on the audience participation levels, but it should be minimum 20 minutes. Yeah, minimum.
Always exciting on Fridays when I have to join this call because it's one of my most favorite programs in
I'm glad.
TMTT, and that is
I'm glad.
because of the quality of speakers that we get to engage. I like the fact that we get to meet TMTT fellows across all the states in Nigeria. So if you're as excited to be here today, I want to see you drop in an emoji. Let us see it coming. Encourage our speaker. Let us know that you are with us today. So just comment your name and where you're joining in from. Let us know your track as well. I want to know what you expect from this session. Trust 3MTT to always just stimulate your brain so that we know that you're ready to learn new things. As always, please know that we're not here to just give you information. We're also here to learn from you. We know that we have entrepreneurs, we have techies here. So I want to see your comments. Where are you joining us from? As always, please know that we're not here to just give you information. We're also awesome. Okay, I can see somebody joining in. We have Hassan Mohammed from Jigawa. We have Regina from Jigawa. Okay, awesome. So it's good to have you all here. And I'm glad that you're also looking forward to this. Okay, so can you just tell me something about understanding customer needs? What does it mean to you, just in the context? And this is so that we can share feedback with our speaker. She's also just going through your charts so that we know what we're trying to do. Basically, this is a very important topic because without a customer, we all know that there are no products, right? So we're building for our customers, and there should be first in terms of what it takes to build the product. If you don't understand your customer, I don't imagine how you'll be able to build for them. So this is actually a topic I'm looking forward to be able to discuss here. We want to understand their preferences, their pain points, behavior, how to gather feedback, right? So I think that it would be nice to be able to just listen to something new. I'm sure we all know a bit about customer experience and understanding, but it would be lovely to just help steer the conversation. And with us today, to help us steer the conversation, we have Miss Anita Ashiedu. I hope I got that correctly, right? And she works with one of the top organizations. She oversees global operations at Cheaper Cash, right? And I'm sure if you're in Africa, you already know cheaper cash, and you know that, it's an Africa-focused fintech. And they have over 5 million customer. Now, you know that, if somebody that works with that kind of organization is telling you about understanding customers, then the person is speaking from experience. And, I'm really glad that we have her here. She has over 8 years experience in the financial services sector, and she has scaled operation teams and have been able to develop operational strategies that has improved the speed and quality of customer support delivery, right? And that's why we have her here. She's passionate. I'm sure I don't even need to tell you that the fact that she's here shows that she's passionate about what she does, and she's happy to share that knowledge with us. So without further ado, I want us to warmly welcome our guests. Let me see the emojis flying. Please say a very warm welcome to our guests. Thank you. Be having a discussion about understanding customer needs and expectations in tech. Thank you, man. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Zara. It's really a pleasure to be here. Really looking forward to this session. So I'm glad that the day and the time has come. So I go ahead and share my screen, right, for the slides. Let me just share my screen.
Okay, so we're about to share our screen. I'm still seeing the welcome. Let's see more emojis while we do that. And let us know what you expect to learn at the end of today's session.
Give me a moment to get this screen share set up.
No worries. We can just talk more about the customer and how we need to tailor products to their need. And I'm sure I've heard something, that say that you don't build a product and expecting a customer, right? What you do is trying to find a customer pain point, and then you build a product that solves that pain point. So yes, we're very happy to learn about how we can do this. We learned in previous sessions that it's important that you put yourself in your customer's shoe, go through your customer's experience. One example we got is someone that thought about building a logistics product. And what he did is that he met the driver. And if you were here last 2 weeks, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. The Baba Moshood example, right? And what he did is that for 2 weeks, he paid for the front seats, and he decided to just be in the bus with the driver for 2 weeks to be able to put himself in that situation and be able to understand the pain points, right, of customers, of drivers. Do they really want or are looking for a way to solve that problem that he's trying to solve? Or is it just, a wish that not a lot of people, really need solutions for? Because sometimes you might come across something that you think is a problem, but is really just an inconvenience for some people. Yes, they would consider it, but would they pay for it? Do they really want it? Or are they even comfortable with the way they are living? So these are some of the things that we have learned that I believe we can relate to our learning today. One really good thing I love about this webinar session is that you build up on the things that you're learning, right? You build up on the things that you're learning. Okay, so while we wait, I think we should stimulate our brains a bit. Yes, can you just share words in the comment section? And if you can hear me, just let us know words that make you think about understanding customer needs and expectations. So what are words that you can relate to customer needs and expectations? If you have any, just drop them in the chat box. Words you can relate to understanding customer experience. So of course, the first one, for me, is empathy. You need to be emphatic to be able to understand your customer, right? You need to be emphatic. So let's drop more words. What do you need? What are words that you think relate to understanding customers? I've given you one, emphatic, right? Another one I can think of is, okay, I can see somebody saying customer needs. Really interesting. Customer needs. Yes, that is something that also relates to the customer. Ms. Anita, please let me know when you're ready. Yeah, while we go through this.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay, awesome. So you can also just drop those words as we move along, and then we'll yield the floor to our speaker. All right, happy to have you here. Over to you, Ma.
Thank you. Is the other side showing in slide format? Can you see
Okay,
them?
so please let us know when you can see. Okay, yes, customer success in the tech world, right?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes, we can see.
Yeah, thanks for your patience with the tech issues. But yeah, I'm all set. I'm ready to go. And I like that you mentioned empathy, because that's actually one of the values we have at Chipper Cash. One of our company values is really understanding the customer, and making sure that we are making products that are making their lives better. So it's really cool to hear that come up in this conversation as well. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here and ready to get started. So today I'm going to talk about customer success in the tech world. And I'm going to dive right in because I'm very conscious of time. So I'll start with an intro of myself. My name is Anita Siedu. I'm currently Director of Customer Operations at Chipper Cash. Zara gave a really great introduction about Chipper Cash before, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but we're a fintech company with various products serving over 5 million customers across Africa. I've been privileged enough to be at Chipper Cash for almost 5 years. I joined at a really early stage of the company and have been there ever since. When I joined, the customer support team was really small. It was just 5 people. We definitely didn't have 5 million customers then. And it's been really great to see the growth that we've experienced as a company and as a team over that 5 year period. I also have 9 years of experience in fintech or financial technology. I started out in marketing because growing up, I loved to read and I still do. And so a career in marketing felt like the best thing for me. And then I went and got my master's and realized operations was actually more suited to my skill set. And so I made the career transition right before COVID. And I'm currently based in Accra, Ghana. I do love to travel. I'm currently in Nairobi, which way you can see the sun. It's the sunset. Yeah, it's always great to visit various countries. And so that's something that I also enjoy doing. Okay, so I'm gonna start with an overview of what you're gonna learn in this webinar today. So really the focus is on understanding customer needs and expectations in tech. So we're going to cover an intro to customers in the tech world, and then we're gonna cover customer feedback, which is a really key component of this topic. We're gonna talk about the channels that customers share feedback on, how to handle this feedback, and then how to exceed customer expectations. Definitely happy to take questions as we go along. And Zara, please, I need your assistance with that because for some reason I can't see the comments on YouTube. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them as we go on. Definitely want this to be as interactive as possible. Okay, so the first module is really to give an intro to tech customers. And I do believe most of us, if not all of us on this call, are tech customers. So a lot of this information will likely be familiar, but it's a great foundation. So talking about characteristics of customers in the tech world, right? So for me, these are the five main characteristics or the main things that people in the tech world have in common when they are using various tech products. One is tech savviness, right? So there's generally a familiarity with digital tools and platforms. You definitely do need some sense of savviness to be able to go, I don't know, to the Apple Store, to the Play Store, download an app, on board, get started. So definitely tech savviness is definitely a key characteristics. Then there's also high expectations, right? So typically tech products promise customers, convenience, affordability, efficiency. And so customers have high expectations when they use tech products, right? So the expectation is for speed, reliability, efficiency. The idea is for the tech product to not be slower than the traditional means. Tech customers are also very active on social media, using websites like Twitter, apps like TikTok to post and view reviews and feedback. I mentioned a little earlier that I'm currently traveling, and TikTok has been like my best friend, right? Every time I go to a new place, I check and see what are people doing there, what are people eating there, what restaurants are they going to, what activities are they doing. And so generally people in the tech world are always looking to see other people's experiences on social media. And I'm sure many of you on this call can relate to this. Either you've used a tech product and posted a review online, or you've searched reviews of a tech product before you've used it. Um, Security consciousness is also key. I think we all know here that there are lots of cyber threats, there are lots of scams online, and so people that use tech products are generally very conscious of making sure that their information is not vulnerable, right? Because typically when you use a tech product, you're giving the company your personal information, like your ID card, your transaction history, even your phone name, your date of birth, right? And so customers are typically very conscious of how that information is secured as they use the product. There's also competitor savviness, right, with tech products, right? So most of the time, even I have different products that do the same thing, different apps that do the same thing, and so people are usually switching between one, two, three, four, just to see where they get the best experience, the best value for money. So these are, for me, the five main characteristics of people in the tech world, mainly based on my experience and what I've seen online. And so it's really important that this is a good foundation as we go to this webinar, so that we're all on the same page about which kind of customers we're talking about today. So next is customer expectations, right? So we talked about who tech customers are, what their characteristics are, and so now we're going to talk about what they expect from tech products, right? So the first thing is user-friendly experience. So typically for tech products, you're sitting in your house or in your car or you're in your class at school, and then you download the product. There's nobody physical to walk you through how to set up, how to onboard. And so customers expect that they have a user-friendly experience when they're using tech products, right? It should be easy to understand, easy to navigate, really clear instructions, just to make it easy for people to onboard remotely. The next thing is responsive customer support. And so ideally, nothing should go wrong, but when it does, customers expect that they get fast responses and then also timely issue resolution, right? Um, because typically when you're using an app, you expect to complete either as a transaction or your payment, you expect to do that quickly. And so if there are issues, you expect that they're resolved in a timely manner. Next, secure and private platforms. So I mentioned earlier about how tech customers are very security conscious. And so the expectation is that the products that they use, the apps that they use, have very robust security measures, right, to protect private information. Again, if you're giving an app your ID photo or your date of birth or any other personal information, the expectation is that the company stores it in a very secure manner so that it's not vulnerable to leaks and then consequences when bad actors get access to it. Again, value for money is another expectation of customers. I mentioned earlier about how tech customers are generally very competitor savvy, and so typically you have people using different apps that do the same thing. So they switch based on usually value for money, right? So for instance, many people will have multiple bill payment apps, airtime payment apps, money transfer apps that essentially do the same thing, and then they switch between the apps just to make sure that they are not spending more than another company is charging them. Last but not least, the expectation for customers in the tech world is for innovativeness, right? So the idea is tech is always forward thinking, on the cutting edge, moving ahead. And so customers expect that the products are always being improved, whether it's better performance, new features, or the products are just constantly being, any issues on the products are constantly being fixed. And so tech companies have a responsibility to meet this expectation, always being innovative to meet those customer expectations. And so we've talked now about characteristics of tech customers, and we talked about how those characteristics feed into customer expectations. And so now I'm going to make this, give you some idea of like what a typical tech customer looks like. And I'm sure you all either know somebody in this persona or maybe you're like that yourself. And so what I have here is three personas, right? So these are three typical tech customers, just to give you, something, a face to look at and help you to better understand what I mean by what a tech customer is, what their use cases and what their characteristics are. So I have three here, but there are many, and I'm sure many of you can identify with these personas, for sure. And so again, the other thing with tech is typically when we say tech, you think of fintech, but tech is massive. There's a lot of different areas. So I try to keep some diversity here. So first you have someone who's young. I gave her the name Kemi. She uses healthcare tech apps to communicate with her doctor, right? So again, when you have somebody who is using an app to communicate with their doctor versus going to the hospital, those characteristics and expectations definitely still apply. Like this person is going to be very security conscious because she's probably sharing health information on an app. She's also going to be very, very careful about like what company she's communicating with, making sure that the doctor that she's communicating with is actually very qualified. So again, that expectation of security consciousness comes in, for this sort of customer persona that we have. And then you have somebody older who is using fintech apps to receive remittances from a child abroad, right? Without tech, this person is probably going to a bank or an agent point to collect the money. But then because of tech, they're able to sit in their house and receive the money on their phone. So again, this person is likely to be security conscious because they're probably giving the app some of their financial information. But they're also going to be competitor savvy, right? Because there are multiple apps that, offer remittances. And so they probably have three or four. And then they're always checking what the rate is, what their fees are, just so that they're always getting value for money. And then you have somebody who uses ed tech apps to learn new skills, right? A lot of you here on this call here to learn and upgrade yourself, and there are apps that allow you to do that without going to a physical classroom. And so again, with somebody like this, they're always going to be looking for secure platform, a platform that actually works, because there's nothing more frustrating than loading a video and it's not loading properly, or you're not getting enough bandwidth and it's loading slowly. And so this somebody who's using edtech apps definitely is expecting innovativeness from the platforms that they use. And so hopefully you can see some of the characteristics and expectations. If they don't apply to you directly, you can see them in the typical personas of customers in the tech world. So I'm about to wrap up module one. So just going to talk briefly about this. So when companies understand the customer needs and expectations, then it puts them in the best position to serve the customers. Zara said earlier, no company exists without customers, and it's true. You can't serve them if you don't understand what they need and what they expect from you. And so it's really critical for companies to understand who are my customers, what are they using my product for, what are their pain points, what do they expect? And then once companies fully understand that, then they're able to build their products and services in a way to match what the customers need. And so and when companies are doing this, then they're able to have loyalty, satisfaction, and retention. And then the customers, they stay, and the companies just keep growing because they are meeting the customer needs. So that's module one. I'm moving on to module 2 and 3, which focuses more on customer feedback. Let me just check if there are any questions. Okay, comments.
So we
Okay,
typically
thank you, Wale, for the comments.
Yeah, we typically have questions at the end of this session.
Okay, cool.
So we'll take that then.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for posting Wale's comments about identifying the markets. Yeah, that's really important. Thank you, Wale. Okay. So now we're going to talk about customer feedback. And the reason I'm talking about this here is because
Okay, I think that our moderator is having network challenges.
yeah,
While we wait for her. Okay, she's back. Awesome.
sorry about that.
No worries at all.
Yeah, I'll just start from the top. So again, we are talking about customer feedback channels here because this is the best way for companies to know whether they are meeting the needs and expectations of their customers. And so I'm going to run through these and I'm going to emphasize on number one in further slides. So surveys, I'm sure many of you have taken surveys from after using a product or a service. The most recent survey I took was after using a food delivery app. They were curious about my experience with the app, but then also my experience of the food. And after taking the survey, they gave me a discount on my next purchase, right? So again, this is a company that's saying, okay, they've seen a new customer, they want to find out if you're satisfied, and then based on your feedback, then they are looking to make improvements and make changes. Social media is another channel for customer feedback. I mentioned this a little earlier, but many customers, including myself, post reviews on social media when we use a product, when we use a service. And so it's very common to actually even search social media when you're using a new product or service just to see what other people's experiences have been. Online reviews are also really common. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with TripAdvisor or Yelp. These are websites that allow you to rate whether it's a hotel or a restaurant that you've been to. So that's another way for customers to leave feedback for companies. And last but not least is feedback forms. I know we are talking about tech, and so the assumption is that everything is online, but there are some tech companies that have offline facilities. So you can go to the shop and then you can leave your feedback on a piece of paper for the team to see and then hopefully to implement. And so these are the various channels where customers can share feedback. And again, it's important for companies to have these channels to be able to understand whether they are meeting the needs and expectations of the customers. And these are the needs and expectations that we discussed a little earlier. So now I'm going to focus more on the customer support channels and how they are good feedback mechanisms. So typically when customers engage with the customer support team, they're able to leave like feedback, leave comments. But then I also do believe that the actual score or the actual customer support metrics are good feedback indicators for companies to know whether or not they are meeting their customers' needs and expectations. And so there are three metrics I want to focus on today: the customer satisfaction score, the net promoter score, and then the customer retention rates. Looking at these metrics, right, in addition to what I mentioned earlier, the surveys, the feedback forms, the social media reviews, gives companies a very holistic view of whether they are meeting their customer needs and expectations. So I'll start with the customer satisfaction score, which is pretty common, especially if you work in the customer support or customer success field. So this measures your customer satisfaction with either interaction with the customer service team or with a product or a service, right? And so at Chipper Cash, we have a CSAT survey at the end of every customer support interaction. So when a customer writes to us, whether they're asking a question or sharing feedback or reporting an issue, at the end of the interaction, we have an automated feedback form that asks them what they thought about the service, and then they're able to rate their experience and then leave comments. So on a daily basis, we are constantly getting this inflow of customer feedback, and that gives us a good understanding of whether or not we are meeting our customer needs and expectations. Typically, companies aim for CSAT scores between 75 and 85%. And at Chipper Cash, we're definitely well within this band and always looking to see how we can keep improving the score just to make sure that we are consistently meeting our customer needs and expectations. Then the next one is the Net Promoter Score, or NPS. This measures customer loyalty by asking them how likely they are to recommend your product or service. So I want you all to think about the last product or service you recommended to someone, right? It's probably not something you do every day, and it's probably something you did because you enjoyed the product or service. But it's actually, like, personal referrals actually a very, very powerful way of spreading the word about a company. I can give you a personal example. So TikTok has been around for about 5 or 6 years, and I never considered downloading it. In spite of all the ads I saw, I was just like, TikTok is not for me. I don't know what they are doing there, but it's not for me. And a good friend recently told me, I think you would enjoy TikTok because there are videos there that meet your interest. And for the first time, I actually considered it, and then eventually downloaded the app. Right. So this is after seeing 5 or 6 years worth of ads about the product, and then one person who I trust told me about downloading it, and that changed my perception and drove me to the action of recommending the app. So for tech companies, when you are meeting your customers' needs and expectations, you're in a position where your customers are essentially vouching for you by telling somebody about it. And that's a very powerful tool, because if you, again, can think about your personal experience, think about the last time you recommended an app to somebody, the last time an app was recommended to you, you definitely took that whole process and that encounter very seriously. And so this is something that all tech companies should really be striving for, is to be in a position where many of your customers are rating you highly in terms of whether they would tell somebody about your product or service. So that's what it means to be a promoter. So ideally, most of your customers are in that promoter band where they would either say a 9 or a 10, saying that they would recommend your product or service to another person. And the goal is to maintain your promoters and then convert the people that are passive, saying they are neutral about recommending you or saying they will not recommend you. The goal is to convert them to eventually be promoters to recommend your company, because we've spoken about how valuable and powerful that is. And so the only way for companies to be able to do that is to be able to understand their customer needs and expectations and serve them in a way that that leads to that loyalty and that promotion. Last but not the least is the customer retention rate. So this measures the percentage of customers that are continuing to use your product over a particular period, right? The world is busy. The world is full of apps. It's very easy to download an app and then day 1, day 2, day 3, you use it and then you just stop using it, right? So it's also really important for tech companies to have innovative apps. If you think back to the expectations and the characteristics that we spoke about earlier, innovative apps, responsive customer support, great service, value for money, security, all these characteristics that customers are looking for, so that customers not only download the app, but they keep using it over time. So I'm wrapping up on the feedback channels here by just saying that when you have your customer feedback channels, whether it's your customer satisfaction score or negative reviews on Twitter or negative reviews on the App Store, they are usually a really good indicator that the company isn't meeting customer needs and expectations. So for companies that are looking to keep growing and keep meeting those needs, it's really important to pay attention to the feedback channels, implement the feedback, and then usually you will see positive results after that implementation. Okay, so I'm going to talk now about handling customer feedback, because now we know what the channels that feedback usually comes through in. The one thing I'll say before I start this module is that Sometimes customer feedback can be harsh, right? Especially when you're dealing with a sensitive product. If you think about the personas I mentioned earlier, somebody who's using an app to receive money, someone who's using an app to speak to her doctor, somebody who's using an app to learn a new skill. These are things that are very sensitive and important. So when things don't go right, you can find that customers get very upset about it. But that doesn't mean you should shy away from asking for feedback. It's actually important to see feedback as a gift, no matter how harshly it's packaged, and still take the lessons from the customer and use it to improve their product or service. So here, for me, three main points. The best practices for handling customer feedback that will get you to a place where your company is consistently exceeding, not only meeting customer needs, but exceeding the needs. So the first thing is to segment your customer feedback, right? So typically you get feedback across multiple channels, right? Sometimes online, sometimes offline. Sometimes the feedback is, can you launch this new product? Can you launch that new feature? Sometimes it's about the product, sometimes it's about the service. And so it's important that you're segmenting the feedback that you receive from your customers so that it's easier to communicate to the key stakeholders internally and then easier to implement. And then it's also important to share the feedback across the organization. So typically feedback comes to the customer support team. Don't sit on the feedback, right? Share it with the product team, share it with the engineering team, share with the marketing team. And it's easier to share the feedback when you've segmented it in point one, right? So once you segment the feedback, then it's easier to share. And then last but not least is to update customers on the outcome of their feedback. So typically when customers share feedback, they're expected to, if it's not implemented, at least it's considered, right? So you should be able to go back to the customer and say, hello, sir. Hello, madam. Last week you mentioned we should launch this new feature. We are looking to launch it in Q4 next year, for instance. Or last week you asked us to launch this feature. It's not something we are looking to do right now, but we'll get back to you once we have, an update on this. So it's important to not only receive the feedback from the customer, but be able to give them an update based on what the feedback from the internal teams. So the point here really is that companies that handle feedback genuinely and effectively typically have loyal customers that are also promoters, right? So if customers see that you're not only receiving the feedback, but you're actually considering and in some cases implementing it, they are more likely to be loyal, they're more likely to feel like their needs are being met, and they're more likely to promote your company, which is a win-win for everyone. This is my final module. I'm going to talk about exceeding customer expectations. So this is really, so in order to exceed those expectations, first you need to understand them. That's module one. And then you need to have feedback channels to receive feedback and be able to assess, whether or not you are meeting the expectations. And now I really want to focus on exceeding as we close this webinar out. So you have 5 main points when it comes to how companies can exceed customer expectations, right? So first is invest in comprehensive onboarding and ongoing training. And this is especially important for the customer support team. Customer support can be responsive and can't meet customer expectations if they are not trained properly on day one and then throughout their time with the company. So it's really important that the team is constantly trained on the new product, new services, how things work so that they can assist customers in a fast and timely manner. Then it's also important to have clear escalation channels and feedback loops, right? So it should be really clear within the customer support team what to do when customers experience an issue, and also what to do when customers share feedback, right? Be able to speak internally with the other teams to get the issues resolved and to get the feedback considered. And then that's where point 3 comes in, really about nurturing strong internal relationships with the product team, with the engineering team, to be able to ensure that any technical issues are resolved, by those teams. It's also important to keep customers updated until issue resolution. I'm sure many of you, if you think back to your negative customer support experiences, it's probably related to you not hearing back timely enough or at all, right? So really important to be able to keep customers in the loop to say, we are aware of your issue, we are still looking into it, expect it to be resolved in X time frame. That really helps to promote loyalty. And last but not least, I know this is something typically customer support teams don't do, but something that I really encourage and advocate for is to test the products of the companies that you work in. You can't help a customer to resolve an issue if you're not familiar with the product yourself. right? So really important to test the product, especially when there's a new release, so that when a customer comes and says, I'm having this issue, I'm having that issue, and the best position to help them because you know how the product works and how it should work. So yeah, these are the 5 main points for how to exceed customer expectations. Mainly targeted at the customer support team, but then also applies to other teams as well. So my last point here for this webinar, for these slides, is to say it does take a collective effort for tech companies to exceed customer expectations, and the customer support team, as you can expect, is a key stakeholder because they're directly interfacing with the customers. So those are the end of my slides. Happy to take questions, and thank you very much for your attention.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much. You already have questions lined up for you, so I'm sure that that would speak to just the understanding. And I like the questions that I am seeing. I am trying to copy it, but I'll probably just send what I have to your DM and read it out as well. So we have a question from Anekwe, and he's asking, how long could one sample survey for customer satisfaction before concluding they are satisfied? Secondly, is there an external body, so a regulatory body that should certify the survey apart from the owner of the survey?
Yeah, this is a really, really great question. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, so I'll be as concise as I can be. So for the customer satisfaction survey, typically it's a one line survey. It just says, how satisfied are you with the service, right? And so companies can choose when they want to issue that survey. It can be, if you have like an online customer support platform, it can be right after the issue has been resolved. Or another approach you can take is maybe you have customers that started using the product. We are in August 2024. Maybe they started using your product in January and they haven't used it since. You can send out that survey to say, how satisfied are you? And so the length, I would say, generally keep it brief, 1 or 2 sentences, because again, as a customer, usually you're very busy and you don't really have time to fill out a long survey unless there's a reward, right, which will incentivize the completion. But really, I recommend 1 or 2 sentences, and then you can, decide when you want to ask a question, whether it's at the end of an interaction with customer support, or maybe it's, for a customer that hasn't used the service in a while. In terms of the regulatory body, I don't know how familiar you are with complaints. So that's typically, a technical term across risk and compliance in tech, where its customers are able to lodge an official complaint if they are dissatisfied with the product or service. And so every country has a regulatory body that pays attention to the complaints, right? Typically, it will be the central bank. So the central bank of the country, and especially if it's a fintech, so the central bank of the country is paying attention to the complaints and paying attention to what happens after a customer officially lodges to say, I'm complaining about your product or service. There's a whole regulatory procedure to follow, and it's the external body that determines whether or not the customer's issue has been resolved. So the second question really deals with complaints, which are typically different from, day-to-day customer support issues.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we have another question here, and so please just drop it because we might not be able to take a lot because of time. So I think this person is speaking to a buy now, pay later platform, right? And what they're basically saying is, okay, I'm trying to, yeah, awesome. Okay, so how do we identify relevant unmet needs that could present new opportunities? I have a BNPL, buy now, pay later platform, and initially it was focused on electronics, but people started asking for groceries, livestock during events, and things like cars. So how can you implement and streamline such feedback and features? I think
that's a great question. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a great question, Omar. And one thing I would say is it's really good that your customers are sharing feedback with you on what they want to see, right? Because you can easily have people that are passive or not really interested in your platform. But for them to be able to say, can you launch this? Can you launch that? I think it's a really good sign. And that's something you can definitely build with. So what I would say is before you get into a place of importing cars and setting up your platform to support that, test it, right? So start small. I think groceries is probably the most affordable option on that list for you as a company to provide and also for the customer to use. So you've got the feedback, you've got people saying they are looking for groceries. So I would recommend testing it. You can start with a small customer segment, whether it's 5 customers, 10 customers, a small percentage of your larger customer base. Test and see whether they are putting their money where their mouth is, right? Because it's one thing to ask for something, it's another thing to pay for it. So I definitely recommend the best way to implement, because you can sit around and you know research and think a lot about this, but the best way is to really test it out and speak to the customers, get their feedback, and then implement and adjust and iterate based on what the feedback is. But definitely, it's a good sign that they're already sharing feedback. So I think the next thing is to test and then keep getting feedback, and before you invest in completely changing your platform.
Thank you. I love that we're getting practical, advice on how
Yeah.
to move your business forward. I told you we have a lot of entrepreneurs here, so I'm pretty happy. So I'll just take one last question. And this is saying, what tools or technologies can help us align better with customer expectations in terms of gathering feedback? So basically, what tools can we use for feedback? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So most customer support platforms already have like inbuilt feedback mechanisms. And if you don't have a customer support platform, there's hundreds of customer feedback channels out there that you can use and set up on your platform. I think in especially if you're starting out, the number of choices can feel overwhelming, and you can feel like which one is good, which one is bad. And so if you're stuck, or if you have a limited budget, Google Forms is a great option. I'm sure many of us here have completed Google Forms in our lifetimes based on different products. So you can use Google Forms. You can use, direct WhatsApp messages. There's definitely free tools available, and then there's also paid tools if you look online. But many customer support platforms already have those features. Like at Chipper, the customer support platform we have has a feedback mechanism, and usually they're inbuilt. And if you can't find it, and you have limited resources, Google Forms is a really good start.
All right. Thank you so much, Miss Anita, for that response. It's been a wonderful 1 hour, right, that we've spent, and I really wouldn't our speaker, Miss Anita, for sharing these invaluable insights, your expertise. 9 years is not a joke. So we're truly, happy and grateful that you have taken out time to enrich this session. We're grateful for your time and effort. And thank you to everyone who participated and engaged, right? We're really grateful that you've added value. I would like to just thank Omar, Anikwe, Wale, Suraj as well, right, for just sharing your thoughts here and making this really, really engaging. As we wrap up, I just want to thank you all for your commitment to attending this session. Together, we can make impact, right, and improve our economic situation, which is really the whole aim of to support us as well. Thank you so much, Ma, for your time and for joining us all the way from Ghana. So when you get to Ghana, reach out, look for Miss Anita there. So thank you so
Thank you.
much. Give
Thank
me a
you.
minute
Thank
to
you.
end the live stream.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Thanks so much. All right. Have a good
Bye.
weekend.
You too.
Bye.